Hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to see you all. The I think we just want to just jump in since everybody who's here now is like part of the team. So I'll call the meeting to order. Present are all of the members of the task force. Um, Unless there's any resident observers, and maybe you can tell Michael. Um, I'm not sure we have to introduce Jackie since everybody's met her that's on the task force. Um, we have minutes from October the 14th to approve. Elizabeth cleaned them up and shared them with everybody. So let me just clarify, has everybody seen them? All right, so I have a motion to approve them?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you. A second, please. May I have a second, please?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'll second it.
That's a muted second accepted. All right, all in favor. Is there anybody not in favor? Can we do this unanimous? All right, no, there's a unanimous adoption. Everybody's in favor, so that task is done. So what we're going to do is, I think, 90% of our time is going to be spent going over Megan's incredible draft report with our incredible comments. And so that'll be fun. What Megan and I worked out was to save time. First of all, she should lead this conversation. But what we agreed to do is that we would work from the SharePoint and that Megan would lead it and that she would indicate those comments that she has no issues agreeing with. And we would just discuss the ones that she thinks discussion is necessary. After that, if there is time, we'll allow public comments. And if there is not time, I invite the public to comment by email to our water email at what is it? water@martinseditions.org. And we'll take a look at them that way. So unless anybody has any other suggestions, I just want to do a little bit of background. I think that the goal here, my goal here is to take this technically excellent report and provide enough guidance in it and maybe documentation support so that the average layperson can follow it and see its merit and see if they have any issues that they want to talk about in January. Oh, that's the last thing. At the end of this meeting, depending upon whether we finish or not, we need to set a meeting date in January for either the presentation to the public or additional discussion. And also, Michael, I haven't figured this out, but if we are going to have hypothetically, if we're going to have a public review in mid-January, as we've discussed, and a number of recommendations are made by the public or by the task force, and we're going to present the report to uh, the council in February, we have to figure out a way for the task force to approve the report and send it on. So we'll have to talk through that process. All right. Megan, does anybody have any comments or questions before we move ahead? Wonderful. Megan, take over. Let's get this done.
Okay, I shared my screen. Can everyone see it?
Can
Okay.
you make it a little bit bigger or
Yeah, that's good.
okay. Thank you.
So like Mark said, the comments that we're just going to address, I'm not going to acknowledge. Discussion of surface water, fine. So, and Elizabeth, thank you for your comments up front. You do have some that are specific to sections. So I thought when we start each section, I'll turn over to you and you can discuss your general comment and we can have a conversation for that. So first comment, executive summary, we can add an executive summary. That's not a problem. Mark wants to comment about adding the ordinance with the Excel spreadsheet. Were you able to find that spreadsheet? Because we have not seen it.
It wasn't a spreadsheet. It was a notes that I had from the conversation we had had. I'm still digging for it. I'll find it.
Okay. So we can add a general, discussion about how the county is just allowing these waivers and exemptions
Oh
versus
yeah.
requiring stormwater management for the
Okay.
code for these single lot developments, which is contributing to the stormwater runoff problems.
And Megan, are you
Megan,
seeing that throughout the county? Can you provide some context that this is happening throughout the county?
We've seen it. My colleague works with the town of Somerset, and so when he took over, they started actually implementing stricter requirements. So they were seeing it there before. We're not too involved in actual land development. We're more of a restoration firm. So I
Okay.
don't know like how strict they are with individual lots versus larger subdivisions. I know even capital improvement projects that we work on, they are subject to meeting the minimum requirements. They're not granted waivers or exemptions or things of that nature.
Mhm.
let me help you, Megan. I think I might have misinterpreted your question. Uh, I have sent to you all versus emails the download that Somerset shared with us of all of the waivers that were granted to residents as of 2023, which means it has to be updated. And I have no clue as to how to do that. So we have to update that. But it showed 2,000 waiver grants in exchange for what's called a contribution of total of $3 million, which there was an email somewhere where they bragged about the fact that they had raised that money and they were granting them to accelerate, if you will, development. So we have that chart. We need to update it and figure out which one of us is going to do that and how. And then I also provided a number of procedural and guidelines published by was it DPS?
Yes.
And I think some of them might be helpful when we start looking at the procedure we want to recommend. I know Megan, not Megan, but the guy who works with her drafted some of one, and then I drafted another one. So we'll probably have to decide what we want to do there. But
Well, those documents are more specific for engineering, design, and permitting. And if they do have the guidelines for the code, but the issue is they're allowing these exemptions. So that's where you would come
mhm,
in and implement
mhm.
stricter requirements to make sure that those requirements are being met. The village would then be enforcing them.
I mean, it
I
seems
agree.
that we don't need to go down a rabbit hole here. We have a problem.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
county's issuing way too many exemptions. We
Yeah.
need to assume that their incentive is to issue exemptions, and we need to just develop our own policy based on that assumption. I would say. I think
Yeah. And
better
that's
for
why
Megan for
Chris,
your time to be spent
yeah.
elsewhere.
I
And
think
that's
it's
why
a
Chris,
fair assumption, but it would be nice to have that document showing the exemptions, Mark. It was missing from your email. Would you mind making sure that you attach it and send it to us?
It's an Excel spreadsheet.
It
I sent
wasn't
it
in
out.
the original email,
I'll
so
I'll send it out again, and then
and was it
I
specific? It was specific for Somerset, correct? Not the village?
no, it was specific for the county.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay, and I thought I sent it out again this afternoon, but I was doing a lot of stuff. Never mind my personal problems. And then, but I'll get it out again, and we have to update it. And Yasmina and Jackie, the whole point of talking about this is simply to demonstrate that we have to do it ourselves.
Right.
That's the only point in the whole thing. So these things could actually be an appendix someplace.
yeah.
All right,
Like,
moving on.
I want to say something. Can I raise my
Please do.
hand?
Just say
Okay.
something.
All right. It was just this. I think one of the reasons that's so important is to demonstrate the urgency of the problem. So I think that the problem could be made more more urgent perhaps. And putting those kinds of statistics in would, and I was even thinking that's the level of the county you were talking about, the waivers. What about, I had asked the question about reviewing the permits that the Martin's Additions has given over a period of time, which would not only, which I understand are pretty much rubber stamped, but if the county gives the waiver, that's passed on in Martin's Addition. I'm not sure, but that was my understanding. So, and also area size, that was another thing that from that you would get out. So to be able to say in 20 years, the size of the homes have gone from, A to Z here, so what percentage of increase in the footprint? And, and then the impact of that on those impermeable surfaces on water flows. I mean, that kind of a story for narrative, I think, which is happening, just needs to come out stronger and be reinforced by some of those key statistics that,
If the village has that data that
we
they can
have.
pass to us,
Uh-huh.
I don't know what homes were being built 20 years ago versus the size of the homes being built today. So if you provide us, we can work that into the report.
Okay.
We'd have to.
Unfortunately, we do not have that kind of data.
Well,
I mean, we can make the
size-
general statement that the size of homes are getting larger. We're just not going to be able to back it up with actual numbers.
I think there might be one really easy graphic that we could include, which is from the Montgomery County mapping system, where they show the difference between the permeable surface in, between 2023 and 2020. It's only a small period, but it shows a difference in the permeable surface coverage. And so we can just use that to show that generally, when development is happening, the buildings are getting bigger and we have more impermeable
Okay.
surface, I'm sorry.
We could also. I think that's a great idea. Where do we find that, Yasmina?
Is it on MC Atlas?
Yeah, you
Okay,
guys
we'll
probably
find
know.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. The other thing we can do is we could walk around this neighborhood and take pictures, and you can see the difference in the sizes of the houses.
Well, I started doing a survey looking at Zillow and looking at the area that they give for new houses by year of construction. This is very unscientific, and but you can see a very clear increase just in their listed sizes. But it was a little sample that I tried just to see what was going on.
Well, that's a good idea. Yeah. So, well, let's do that. All right. So, do you guys, is that enough to make the urgency, besides rainfall, storms, the 10-minute storms, which I think also has to be mentioned, is because I didn't see it in there. I'm not saying it isn't there. But between those two things, or those two groups of things, I think that makes the point.
And the other thing, of course, is the age of the existing infrastructure. So, if I don't know when those pipes were put in, but the actual.
We do
You said
mention
that
that they're reaching their life expectancy and undersized. That is mentioned.
Well, if we're not, I totally agree. There were statements there where you were saying undersized and life expectancy. I think that we do know or at some point we knew when these pipes were last installed, and it was like 1940 or something. So
We
I
can
mean,
reference the dates on the but we have as-bills for a couple of the systems that we can mention the dates for those.
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Can we move
Datas
on,
and
everybody?
table, yeah. So the next comment was regarding the technical discussions with datas and tables. I know it is a lot of technical jargon. This is an engineering assessment report, so it is technical in nature. We can try and add more language to make it a little more interpreted for the general public, but that's another reason why we have these public meetings. It's an opportunity for the public when they don't understand something, they ask the question, and sometimes it's easier to have the conversation versus to try and really just add a bunch of extra language to explain things. So that, that's the purpose of this meeting is if you don't understand something, I can then try and break it down a little more clearly verbally. It gets cumbersome to do that in writing.
Megan, I will say, I have some familiarity with a lot of the data sets you were using and the modeling and everything else. I did find even that without keys and legends and colors, I just, it was a little hard to follow.
Mark did bring that up. The full output was in the appendices, which has the legends and the keys, but we will add snippets to the snapshots that have
Okay.
legends and keys. That way, as you're going through the report, the figures are more discernible or more readable,
Yeah.
which that is a comment down below. Glossary, we can add a glossary. We'll add, like we just said, we're going to add keys and legends. We'll talk about that when we get to those sections. And Mark, I know you mentioned, language going from one section to the next. That's fine. We can, add some more language so it flows. And just discuss the figures and charts a little more. That's not a problem. We can reference the homes.
So you're teaching us words. I'll teach you the word expository writing. That's what that's called when you lead the reader through it, so that
Yeah.
they don't have to work.
I know in my thesis writing that was the style we used.
Yeah, you got it. Everybody's done it. It's just it has a name.
The area was just from our outline in AutoCAD. We can see some other sources and we'll double check it. We'll revise language. I agree. Flooding is not a recent problem. We already talked about population and home sizes. And we talked about the document from Somerset. This is all language. All of Mark's language comments I read through. I don't have any objections. They can be inserted. And so, Jackie, for your comment about construction changing the natural water flows, on the historic map,
like we definitely had that on Raymond Street where we lost a stream because construction filled in the stream. And so,
on this map, the very historic, we can go ahead and highlight these channels, and obviously, they're now, and we can note that they're now piped, and then we can also add. Where's our topography? We can add some contours to this map and just show like where the natural drainage patterns are. Like you said, they're more of ephemeral ditches, but the majority of the runoff is flowing through the rear yards of properties in these areas. So we can add another map and just highlight that those are the natural drainage patterns, and then they can see like where a home or a road just has cut it off.
Yeah.
But that's good, so they can see it. But we also should say it.
We'll explain. Like I said, we'll explain the figure once we add it.
Oh, okay. That's gonna be my standard refrain today.
And one could even venture to say why it's important, or just not to state it, but if it's a significant indicator or has a significant impact on the problem, to actually. I don't mind if you say that. I mean, I think that helps build the case.
Okay. More language.
Sorry, one more comment here is you may make a note that actually some of the improvements within yards are draining onto the public right of way and then onto the road. So they're draining onto the sidewalks right now.
Okay.
And that creates a hazard. And we see that especially on Shepherd Street.
Yeah, I heard a story of someone who slipped on that, sort of a skiing effect, stepping onto and she fell and was in a wheelchair for 2 months with the, dislocated back or something. So.
Megan, I see you're writing notes as sort of comments or replies to the.
These are not.
These
are not necessarily replies yet, but
yeah.
just notes that aren't, Yasmina just mentioned another thing to add that wasn't a previous comment.
Right.
So I don't want to forget about it.
Yeah. And I hear you saying the language and you're just blowing through it, which means to me that that means it's all okay. But we need to sort of somehow have a record of what we've decided today, what you've agreed to, and what we all mutually agreed to. What's been
What
agreed to, basically, one way or another.
as we go after the meeting, as we go through, we'll just if we did it, we'll like it. If we discuss
Perfect.
something, I'll add the note in here. There was something up here where I said we're going to add this.
Great.
Um, so the next comment, which has come up a few times, I don't know why. It was all over the place. Here we go. The modeling of the 10-year storm scenario. That is what is required. State and county design guidelines is closed conduit storm drains are designed for the 10-year storm event. We did take into account climate change projections when we were proposing the updated sizes. So it does account for increased runoff. It just becomes cost prohibited and in some cases not even feasible to convey the 100-year in a closed system. The 100-year is considered more in like stream restoration and valleys where, it could impact where you have like a floodplain. That's where the 100-year is taken into place. But we're not going to recommend doing more than what state and county guidelines advise. It just
Yeah,
becomes very cost prohibitive. So that's why the 10-year is proposed.
Megan, I mean, my understanding is that Montgomery County is now increasingly looking at the 50-year, storm event as the guideline and no longer 10 years. I mean, where is, because, we have to be aware that, by the time we implement any ordinances or make any improvements, the guidelines from the county may be completely different. So,
And that's why during full engineering analysis, that whatever is current is that's what it would be designed to.
but if that guideline is in the middle of being revised,
It's
can we
you're
can
only
we can we make sure that that is really the thinking for 2026, 2027?
I know we're involved with some of MDE's stormwater. They're getting ready to revise their manual. Right now, I'm not aware of them changing the
yeah,
design criteria. It's more it's the projection rainfall runoff that they are working on requiring the projected 2050 75% confidence interval, 8.5 RCP emissions. There's various scenarios with the projections. So they're trying to figure out what projection they're going to require for design, but they're not
Mhm.
necessarily changing the storm event.
Well, how
Uh,
about this? How about this?
yeah,
I mean, I think that we should address the fact, we should state exactly what you stated, but provide some warning about the 50-year and the 100-year and the 75-year problem and some recommendation that be monitored throughout this process and that the council consider whether it wants to look at a 50-year storm
and that's something
level of effort.
when these projects go to full design and permitting, I don't think the county's going to be upset if you do more than they're asking for.
Mhm.
Um,
another way,
you
Megan,
know,
to handle it might be to say what you've proposed to me, I think of as a floor. This is the minimum we need to do.
yeah,
Because we know that, I mean, every time the models have been recalibrated and redone based on actual data that's coming in, the 10-year storm event has become more severe, more
yes,
water in a shorter period of time. I think that, the description in the report of here you need an 18-inch, here you need a 20-inch, I think those are a little bit fungible in that, if I'm looking at it, the actual engineering design, and they say, gosh, you can go to 22 instead of 18 for only 3% more cost, we're going to do that. That just makes sense to give us more
yeah.
capacity. So I think maybe clarifying, because I don't want people to read this and think, oh, this is our endpoint. I want people to read this and think this is where we really need to, at a minimum, know that we've got to do this areas, and we may bump up a little bit some of the sizing of the pipes.
And just to warn you, in some cases it might not be feasible, because you get to a point where
Yes,
you're not going to
need to
upgrade
understand that.
upland when you
Yes.
tie in. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
we can note that larger storm events can be considered during full engineering design and permitting.
Right. And really it's, what is the increment? I mean, what you should say is, the incremental cost and the actual engineering feasibility
Yeah.
of upsizing can be considered at this later stage.
And
I think
Yeah, I
that's a
don't.
blanket statement.
if I might add, I think that makes sense, but I think we're also talking about two different things, which is, the engineering solutions that are being proposed right now, as well as ordinances to mitigate any additional flooding that we might experience
Right.
from
Right.
construction.
Good point.
So we need to separate those two issues. And I think one important consideration whenever we're looking at these issues generally is, is the 10-year with a 10-year kind of what did you call it, Jackie? You said, like, baseline, the ground
Floor.
Floor.
Yeah,
the
with the
Floor.
floor
floor.
is, are we still going to be experiencing downstream runoff, that might impact other homes, right? So there's one thing if it goes through a garden. It's another thing if it's impacting people's homes.
Yeah.
And that's when you really need to look at increasing the capacity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I had just a question about the pipe sizes. I mean, when you say this is the base, but you could add in incremental. Well, if you're going to dig up the street, if you're talking one of these under the street, east, west, north, south pipes going the full length of the street down to where it runs into a catchment, county basin or whatever. I mean, you can't dig it up after 10 years probably. So, and you said, Megan, that there's an issue when you get to the connection point. The connection point is one size, and so you can't have a pipe going into it that's larger. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Correct. You have
Yeah.
to design for your pinch point.
Yeah, pinch point. Okay.
Because you're not going to, there's no point in upgrading. Like, say you have like you said, Shepherd Street, we're proposing a pipe. We're going to size it for the 100-year, but then where it's tying into, it's not feasible. It's not with the elevations and other slope constraints. It's not feasible to upgrade that to the 100-year event. So it's not worth doing it upland. You're just going to create like a backwater situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
But
so
And that's something, we just did a spot survey. So these are all things that'll have to get looked at during detail engineering design when you topo the entire project area.
Yeah.
This is just an assessment. We're actually working with Gaithersburg, where another firm did this assessment, and we're now in the detailed engineering design, and they gave us the assessment, but we have to do full survey. We're going to redo their modeling, and we have to agree with what they proposed, or we'll propose something else.
Yeah.
This is just kind of, a footprint to get started.
I think that that's fine. But I'm in agreement with every point that my team has been making, in that these things should at least be touched upon in this report. The problem with pipe sizing, the problem with small pipe now and having to put in another pipe 10 years from now, the problem with the distinction between what we need to be doing on the surface. Maybe we're talking about green infrastructure. Maybe we're talking about what people are going to do in their yards, and the storms that we're facing over 50 years. We could certainly talk about that. And what a 10-year storm has changed, how it's changed, what a 10-year storm has changed over the period of time. And the pinch point problem, which means maybe we have to look at a bigger project, or maybe there's alternatives like tree boxes and catch basins and stuff like that that might work, but I just made that up, so you'll say no or laugh. But we should, the story should be complete.
I added a note that we'll add these things to the report.
Right, and it's not can do. They should, the whoever's going to lead this charge should do these exploration and consideration things in the process of deciding what they're actually going to approve.
Correct.
These
And
are
I
sh
will, and just to note on your tree boxes, and like, and rain garden comment, those facilities are typically sized for just the very small 1 inch rainfall events. So when you get these splashy storms, they're overwhelmed. They really don't do anything. That's why you got to, the overall conveyance when you're having large scale flooding problems is where you need to work on improving. And it is that gray infrastructure, or if you had room for a large retention pond, that would be an option, but there's just no room within the village to put in a facility like that. I will say those rain boxes and rain barrels do make some grant applications more attractive. So I definitely encourage residents
Yeah.
to look at doing that on their properties, and for the village to do it anywhere they can within their properties. But just understand, when you get that, you say that 10-minute rainfall, those are going to be overwhelmed. They're really not going to do much.
Okay, so
Somebody's,
but that's something else we should say. We should talk about the alternatives like the tree boxes and the rainscapes
yeah.
and all that stuff
Oh,
as desirable but limited in what they can accomplish. The one
Is
inch rainstorm.
Especially when it's just a spot here and there. If every resident really
Right.
did put a rain box, or a rain garden on every downspout, then you might see somewhat of an attenuation for these larger storm events. But when it's just a spot here, a spot there, it's not looking at the overall
Yeah.
picture.
Well,
And
then we
with
should
that, we
say
should
that
also
too.
make the point that, they serve another function, which is just, to filter the water that's being,
Yes.
generally to filter the water and make sure that we are being good stewards of our environment and of the Chesapeake. So I know that, that might not sell the expense to, a lot of residents, but it's important to just keep repeating.
Yes, and like I said, when Balin's doing a project like this, we do look for any opportunity to put in green infrastructure, because part of our company mission is to improve the bay.
Right.
I just wanted to say that that was what I was trying to get at in my 1 to 10 notes up at the top under remediation solutions, was that I felt that that section could be much more amplified. I mean, you list these techniques, or these whatever you want to call them, these opportunities to
Hmm.
affect the flow, right, that individual homeowners can do. But it needs more than just being named. It's like dropping a name, but they need a little bit more meat on it to say kind of like what it is, and then maybe the context where it's most effective. And an example of that, for example, somebody asked me, well, what can a person who lives at the top of the hill do to address the problem? And they said they had put in a rain garden, and it actually, to staunch the flow, that was coming down the hill before it passed on to the next further down. I mean, most people that live at the top of the hill don't have too many worries because they're at the top of the hill. And I remember that story over at Chevy Chase Village. The top of the hill people didn't want to pay for anything, so they ran the pipe halfway up the street where the problem got to be more severe. But this person really wanted to be a good citizen and do something, and so there isn't anything in there necessarily for the person who lives at the top of a hill. And we have plenty of those houses in Martin's Additions, and they're not on the high priority list probably. So having the remediation solutions that are as a section that's, I don't know, certainly I would really like to see it, if it's possible, to make it more extensive with links to sources. There are some communities that have developed whole guides on this that we found out. I think it was in one of our meeting reports, with neighboring villages, a real how to do manual. I mean, where there are sources like that, sort of links to sources, links to education facilities. You mentioned some of them in passing, but it just seems to me that it's such an important thing to get multiple efforts going and to get people interested, regardless of what the council takes up to finance in the gray infrastructure area, what they can do as homeowners. We want
I
to
wonder,
incent.
Elizabeth, though, was the scope of work both for the green initiatives that the village might do as an education campaign, as well as the more technical engineering gray initiatives? I mean, did the scope of work
Yeah,
include both? Because I sort
Yes.
of thought
it
it
did.
did.
It did. There were
Okay.
education was one of the bullets
Yeah.
and put, yeah.
Well, yeah, could
So
I?
we,
Yeah.
like I said, we did list a few educational outreach. We are not outreach coordinators, so we
Uh-huh.
just discussed what our experiences are. And so that's,
Yeah.
I think what you guys have done is great, reaching out to the other villages, figuring out what they've done, and you guys can decide what you think may work for the village. And I'm happy to include those things, but this is a Balian report, so we have to limit it to the work we physically perform. So
Uh-huh.
we didn't interview those adjacent communities, so we can't write
Yeah.
to what was discussed. But if
Yeah.
you want to provide a summary, we can reference it and put it in appendices, or if you guys make your own document, we can reference that as well.
Yeah,
It sort of
Megan, I
seems
think.
like, oh, go ahead, Mark.
That
Okay.
was
Uh,
Arthur.
yeah, this is me, Arthur Alexander. What I think we're talking about here are trade-offs. One of the focus on solutions has been on the increasing the size of the drains. Uh, and I'm wondering, from what, Megan, from what you've said so far, some of the trade-offs here don't seem to be really all that worthwhile. The rain gardens, the trees. I'm wondering about if we were
Well,
thinking
wait.
about
Wait.
alternative solutions. Uh, all those are rain gardens, trees, swales, plus changes in or limiting the impermeable surfaces. Uh, if we look at all of those, do they just kind of fade away as not being all that uh, uh, they don't do much of a job in reducing the flow? Or is it all in the drains?
No, I think changes to the code will help reduce the volume of runoff, so that will help the issue. The drains is a combination of upgrading what's there because it is undersized for projected storm events, and then also a lot of streets lack infrastructure, so that water
Right.
just flows down those steeper streets and overwhelms the bottom area. Where if you can pick it up as you go, you're going to help the downstream areas. Then it also gives private homeowners an opportunity to put in a French drain or some sort of under drain facility practice in their backyard, and they could then tie it into the system.
Good.
I
Okay.
agree. I mean, I think we absolutely need to do both. I just think an engineering firm like Bayland is better on the gray solutions. And then we may need a separate work stream for the task force that just pulls in what are the best green solutions? How do we advocate those? And do we want to create any kind of financial incentives to get our neighbors to join in? But it's a very different type of initiative because it's education and outreach. The reason we should do a lot of the green solutions is also because they make a huge difference in terms of local heat. So the
And local
trees,
local
Yeah,
what?
trees.
Heat.
Yeah.
Oh,
heat, what, how, I mean, what is the heat in our neighborhood? And permeable surfaces and capturing that water and how dark or light the surfaces is can make a difference of like 5 degrees in a neighborhood like ours. So we need to think more holistically, I think, around the green solutions because they have multiple benefits that we ought to do an education campaign for Martin's Additions around.
And we can add more language because we do a lot of green infrastructure improvements as well. It's just one of those things when you have a major flooding and conveyance issue, it's kind of a secondary solution. So, but we can add language about what works best for individual lots and um, just to provide some guidance in that regard.
That would be great. And then if you know some entities that specialize in green on a level that of expertise that you're not claiming that you have, I didn't mean the claiming is not the right word. You're not saying you have, then maybe you could provide some sources, resources, recommendations, names, things like that, so we can start looking around.
Yeah.
But so you would set us off. Then, if you think you can do it, fine, say you can do it. If you don't think you can do it, you could point us to who can.
We can do it. I'm just saying it's a secondary solution to
Yes, we
address the
understand.
flooding. Yeah.
We understand. But
And
if,
I think
or
that
my, I
And it's
think
on
the
the
feeling of it,
individual lot level as well, which
I know,
is
and that's harder to sell. I totally get it, and it'll probably require some kind of financial support from the county or from Martin's Addition or wherever.
I
And
think
but
this
I think
is,
we wanted this task force, the members all want like a holistic approach,
EPA has a
green
lot of
and gray.
information, Mark. We could use
Oh,
EPA has a lot of information that we can use.
okay.
the
So we
EPA
can
has a
reference
ton of
that.
information. Rainscapes has a ton of info. The county has a ton of information with
Yes.
its Rainscapes program.
Yeah.
I think the point, sorry, I was trying to make
Oh,
is I think because this report really does dive into the gray solutions that Bayland really specializes in and does an excellent job in identifying the need for. That is the piece that's missing from this report. And having from the beginning the executive summary, this holistic picture and explaining the need for multiple solutions. We don't have the room for, huge BMP trains on each street, right? That could, help with capturing the water and filtering it and taking it somewhere else. So we are going to be relying on homeowners to make individual efforts. And so that needs to be said from the get-go.
I wanted to also just add, I agree with what Yasmina said, but I was just looking at the document that from the scope of work and additional scope of work details that Mark sent around that were addendums to the sections. And there was addendum to section 5231, which was develop remediation solutions. And that included things as changed to the code of ordinances to limit runoff, but it also said identify beneficial public education topics, including but not limited to permeable surfaces, rain gardens, tree function, tree planting, tree canopy, or maintenance of bioretention devices. So what I'm saying, it Jackie had said, was that in your document? And I believe it was, because it said noted and accepted afterwards. So it's just, and I think we've covered it. And what Yasmina just said would really round it out if that's possible to do, because we we need to engage the residents.
exactly.
If they focus in on the high priority areas and they see, oh, my street's not there, I guess I don't have to pay any attention to this, right? There's nothing in it for me. Well, and they just turn off there, and they don't bother reading it or following it. That would be a shame. So it may be a narrative issue more than anything else, but it's to say there's a role for them. We can't do it without full community education and even though you're not going to do that, but education and participation. And the participation comes, and why it's so important is because there isn't that much public space. A lot of people may not realize that fact either, is that the council is very limited in what they can do because there isn't much public land. It's almost all private. So the problem is everybody's problem. And if we're getting the water from Chevy Chase Village, I think that's the biggest example, if you have to use one. It's washing across Brookville Road and coming into our jurisdiction, you know, then it's everybody's problem. And what are we going to do so there are certain things you can do, or you can, what you said, Megan, you can link your pipes into this main pipe that's going to be put in on the street, if that's one of the streets that they live on. Those, rather than just focus primarily, as the report seems to do right now, is really focused heavily on the high priority areas. And all of that is very good and interesting detail. I mean, it's very explicit and very complete. It's just that I don't think that's all there is I think that's a key piece and a key piece for your company. But well, I don't want to drive it into the ground, but you said holistic, and I think that's sort of what we need to aim for.
And we will
Okay.
incorporate the language as we've discussed.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Thank you. That was a big one. Have we made any progress on the 109 yet?
Oh,
I don't know what number we're at.
That's a joke. Come on.
yeah, they're not numbered.
I should have said towards 109.
this is language we can incorporate. I think we've already discussed this. And this Mark, so this Mark we talked about earlier today, we are not planning and zoning
We know.
officials. So, we can add language that we recommend looking at the allowable sizing, setbacks, driveway, and lot coverage, et
Exactly.
cetera, but we're not going to make numerical recommendations.
I didn't
Okay.
expect that. I
Okay.
expect the concepts, and
Okay.
don't forget, as you saw in the draft language I suggested, which will or won't use, preserving the trees that absorb water and involving our arborist in it.
Okay.
Yeah, because trees do absorb a lot of water. The right trees do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
That we can add. We can explain that. So Elizabeth, your question about the historical data, we can look at the Montgomery County Atlas and see how many years they go back, and we can
Mhm.
explain that.
It was to have a comparison, if it were possible, of the before and the current in
Mm-hmm.
terms of
I mean, we can look at what's publicly available and
yes.
Yeah,
and incorporate it.
yeah, Megan, I know when we did our tree committee 10 years ago, the county had done some aerial studies using LiDAR, looking at tree coverage and impermeable surface, and they had some comparisons over time. I don't know if they've continued that. Uh, they had at least one or two previous studies so that they could look at change. And that was 10 years ago, so they may have new information.
Okay, we'll
Arthur,
take a look.
Let me,
do you know who at the county, which county
yeah, I'll
agency or
have to go
department?
back and look at my files and
Yeah,
find out who it was who actually looked at that. We were dealing with tree people, but they were getting it from some more general survey of
correct.
And
LiDAR.
that vegetative coverage is available on the MC Atlas, so we can definitely pick it up there. My understanding is that the county is about to do its LiDAR overview and publish that information, but it's not available yet. The most up-to-date information is not available. They do have some historic data,
Yeah, right.
which is
Well,
really cool to look at.
as of 10 years ago, there's probably something more recent.
Yeah.
All right. So Arthur, if you would,
Yeah,
Yasmin
I
would please
will. I'll make a note of that. Yeah,
direct Megan to whatever resources you found, and then she can run with it.
right.
Oh, Megan is super familiar with this data, I'm sure.
All right.
Well, I'm just trying to tie knots here.
So, Mark, you have a question about sources and the relevant of regional impervious areas? And
Yeah,
no.
because there was a long discussion about the impervious nature of our region, but I didn't see how that ties into our community. It may be crystal clear to you, but it's just not
So
stated.
I'll add language. This was the drainage area for the 12 study points, and the impervious area ranged between these two percentages for those 12 areas.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I didn't know what a study point was either.
So that was we're going to add a glossary as well. So
Okay.
that take care of that.
Could you tell us what it is right now?
A study point. So it's the downstream point that you're interested in. So we have. So when you delineate a drainage area, it's to the study point. So it's normally like an outfall. So when we're looking at a storm drain system, where does it outfall? That's the study
Uh-huh.
point.
Uh-huh. Like the bottom of the Khan's backyard.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that was one. Uh-huh.
and so they're all in the appendices. Let's see. So this was the overall village drainage area for the soils. And somewhere in here.
You know somebody's going to ask what an outfall is.
That'll be in the glossary.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, it's just the downstream point that we're looking to analyze. And so we broke the village up into 12 drainage areas that each have their own specific downstream study point.
Mhm.
Megan, is our soil pretty typical for the whole county, or are there a lot of variations in the soil? I mean, it was good to see that we were B.
It was, I tried to just glaze over that because B, it does, should help, but I think the village's issue is you have such a high percentage of impervious area.
Yeah, that
I
we've
mean,
paved over
overall,
what we have. I
I
mean, well,
mean,
but I think that's a point to communicate to our community, to the
Yes.
council,
and
is to
we'll
say,
add that. I know the
yeah,
first public meeting, I did really stress that
yeah,
you guys have
we
a
have this
very,
great natural asset that we've blocked
Mhm.
because it's quite, I mean, that's a very good, soil type, but
Yeah.
we have paved over
You
it.
mean you're talking about
Yeah,
the streams that used to
No, I'm
flow.
talking about the
just the
type of
land.
soil we have has good permeability.
Uh-huh. The
So
swales.
no,
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 Just
that
the,
the dirt.
everybody's, yeah, it's just the
The dirt.
soil in
Yeah,
Martin's
yeah.
additions.
Okay.
The
But
soil sampling,
there were also those swales that in some areas probably had a very important purpose of carrying
mhm,
water away, but some of those have been graded
I,
out and covered over. And like
right,
the bottom of Quincy Street there, where they actually broke into that underground when they were digging
yeah,
with their backhoe, they
right.
broke into the river underneath, which caused a
Yeah, that happened on
tremendous,
Raymond Street too.
oh
They were they
gosh,
were they
yeah.
were digging out a garage and they hit a stream.
Every night they'd dig it out and then would come back the next morning, it was full of water
Yeah,
again. They'd
yeah,
pour
we
in
had the
more
same
gravel
thing. Right,
next morning.
right.
So does that mean that that's in terms of code and permitting that we need to consider underground streams?
This was a question that raised right at the very
Yeah.
beginning
Yeah,
of the committee. We
yeah.
know it's happened in a few areas, and apparently, I'm told that Prince George's County does have a requirement in new construction to drill to see where the water table is and to make sure that foundations are some designated height above that. I think it's a foot
Mm.
above the water table. We don't, Montgomery County doesn't do it, and as you noted, as was noted, this has been a problem across the street from me on Raymond Street, where they dug the garage. He said 6 inches of depth cost him something like $100,000 of remediation.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Well,
Mhm.
I
and
think
now
that we do
another,
need, go ahead.
sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was also going to say, and we can explain this more. This is, publicly available soil data, so it's more broad. It's not very. It can vary site specifically. We've done geotechnical investigations where we see soil conditions that are very different from what the web soil survey indicates.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So it's like I said, it's for course modeling and assessment. Any detailed engineering and design, you need to do soil borings in your work area. If you're putting in a rain garden or a small BMP, we do a soil boring to see where groundwater is.
Well, I think that that concept can be mentioned in this report. Not the detail, but the fact that that we've got to start looking at soil borings for water tables, for underground streams, and to avoid impact or mitigate impact when we have to. And then maybe we're going to have to look at code changes that not only require that, but then require a certain kind of remediation in the actual construction that doesn't breach that boundary.
And I mean, I can discuss how you handle it for a stormwater BMP, but as far as a foundation and building, that is out of our area of expertise. That's something you'd want to consult a structural or geotechnical engineer for foundation recommendations.
Which is exactly what you should say in your report. For that,
Okay.
you'll have to consult
Yeah.
the right
Yeah.
engineers.
So we'll add that in the overall remediation solution
Cool.
area.
One
Cool.
other thought I had about this table here, this section on soil quality and infiltration rate is this is a positive thing, is what you're saying. I mean,
Yeah.
right? And you could actually say that Martin's Additions is fortunate to have those kinds of soils that, given the opportunity to absorb, would do it at a better rate than other places. But it's challenged by, the effectiveness of this is a natural remediation, I guess you'd say, but it's inhibited or compromised by the the impervious surfaces that are put in. So, I mean, I think that's a qualitative statement. This is all very objective, what you have here, but it helps to understand that, indeed
Yeah.
it is an advantage if people can conserve it better.
I mean, it's a really good point, Elizabeth, and I appreciate how Megan nuanced her answer on it.
Mhm.
Because we actually saw this very practically during the construction of a house behind us on Cummings, where they had done some boring and environmental studies and found that there was a difference in the infiltration rate in the front of the house and the back of the house. And so, though, within a it's a large lot, but relatively small space, you can have those differences.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, Mark, we've gotten through how much of the report? 13 of 60 pages, and we're halfway through the meeting. So we might have to go a little faster.
Peter. Okay.
Well, these have been big ones, and
Yeah.
let's just let's just roll and do what we can do. If we have to do another one of these meetings, we do.
I've already talked about why we picked the modeling we did, and we'll explain that. This is the climate change projection data that's available. So that's what we have to use. And okay, Jackie just hit upon that. This once again is the projection factor that MDE is considering requiring when they update the design. Nothing's been decided yet, so that's what we're using for now. And as Jackie said, it's high. It's assuming higher emissions rating, so it's a more increase in climate change and therefore more increased runoff. And I can try and explain better. So the way this is interpreted is you can see using current rainfall data, the 1 year is a little over 100 cubic feet per second. The 10 years, 367 cubic feet per second. Using these projections, it would change. It increases from 370 to 415. So that's just the increase in volume of runoff that we then designed for.
So that's like a 400% increase?
No, it's going from
No.
367 to
Oh,
415
367. Yeah.
to 415.
Well,
So you go down. So current is 367 for this storm event. Projected is 415. So it's increasing,
20,
yeah, 20%.
20. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but that's significant, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, it could be the
Yeah.
difference of a pipe size up or two,
Well,
depending
see,
on your slope and type of pipe with Manning's End. So
that's another way to explain the significance. It could mean a different pipe size is required.
okay.
Looking out over 50
Yeah.
years.
It would give the implication, what do you do with that? What is that? Just what you said, a 20% increase in such a time that could be remediated by installing a larger pipe size or something. That would really help.
Okay. So I don't expect civilians to necessarily understand. It's just this is the program we use and this is its capabilities. For people that understand it, great. But that unfortunately, I don't see a way to dumb down. This is the computer model we're using. It has one-dimensional and two-dimensional capabilities. And that's that. I mean,
You're
I don't know.
talking about hydraulic.
What does everybody else think?
it's the program
I
we're
thought it was,
using. I have to reference what we're using.
of course.
I
We
mean, we've
just don't know
never,
what it does. What does it do? What is a hydraulic analysis? Maybe that's the question.
did we not?
I don't know.
To
We can, I
determine
can,
to
it's,
determine runoffs. It says
yeah, so once again, I know I explained this at one of the public meetings, but we can incorporate it more into the report. So hydrology is the volume of runoff that's going to the system. Hydraulics
Hmm.
is then how it moves through it. So this program, we take this volume of runoff, this 415 CFS, and we run it through the pipe system. We're able to run it through the pipe systems. And that's where we can see, where is it coming out of the inlets? Where is it not adequate to be conveyed through the pipes? Where is it flooding the roads?
That's
It's
exactly
actually
the
kind of
exit.
amazing that we can do this in modeling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's kind of,
it's
yeah,
wonderful.
yeah.
But I think if you explain it just the
Okay.
way you explained it, that would help.
Okay, we can add some language.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, quick update. I just checked Montgomery County LiDAR. They only did it for 2 years, 2009, 2014, and all their current stuff is based on their 2014 data. So no new stuff.
We already talked
Well,
about
is the
that.
2014 the same you were looking at? Because you said a different
Yeah,
date.
yeah. We
Okay.
had the data was just coming out when we were doing our tree study. So it was a hot new stuff, and they've never updated it since then.
Yeah. I wonder why.
Um, yeah,
Mhm.
I was told by somebody in the planning department that they're doing it again. They're getting ready to do it again.
Yeah,
because they're $3 billion in debt.
yeah.
That may have
And
something
Well,
to.
and even though they update the data, I don't know if they necessarily look at the comparison. That's something that sometimes has to be done by hand.
Yeah,
I know
exactly.
that's how a lot of jurisdictions find non-compliance with people putting up sheds and structures without permits. They compare the impervious areas between the years.
Yeah, right. In fact, when we did this, the woman who handled it with us, she did it by hand. She eyeballed it.
So that's why if MC Alice has just the graphic aerials showing like one year and another year, we can show those images and people can just
Yeah,
visually see the increase.
right.
Um,
that's a
so
better way to present it in this kind of a study anyway.
yeah, versus the numbers. So Mark, you had a
People love
comment
pictures. Yeah. Go ahead.
about showing the locations where interpolations and assumptions were made. That's going to be very cumbersome. What we can do is just explain how or why we did the interpolations or assumptions. That would be very detailed mapping and labeling. So what we did, we surveyed more like the major junctions of the storm drain system. Those are the critical elevations. If we had as-built data for the other structures, great. If not, what we did is, we have this structure here, we have this structure here. If there's one in the middle, we just assumed a straight slope. That's what the interpolation means. Same thing if it was an inlet, we just looked at what the LiDAR elevation was and assumed that was the grade elevation just for the sake of our modeling.
Hmm. Okay, some
But to
kind of an
actually
explanation.
map the entire village with this
No.
information would be very cumbersome. But we can just kind of detail more about how the interpolations and assumptions were made.
Yeah, and how it works
Okay,
and
yeah.
what you get out of it.
Is that what you use to those flows that come from Chevy Chase Village over to Taylor Street, for example? Is that what you would use to estimate the volume of?
We didn't model their system, so we
Mhm.
didn't do any assumptions or interpolations. That goes back to the hydrology, where we did look at the off-site drainage that comes into the village that is considered.
Mhm. Okay.
And I think there is a overall. Here you can see this was the overall drainage area for the assessment. Here's Brookville Road. So you can see the off-site area that we did consider coming into the village. Zoom in. So here's Brookville Road.
Doesn't say that. I'm kidding.
So here's Brookville Road. So you can
There
see
you
this
go.
whole area is the
Uh-huh.
outside of the village runoff that comes into the village. Some of it goes through here and some of it comes in, another area.
See, I think that's a huge point to make,
Yeah, it is.
including your little squiggles,
Uh,
so that so that they can literally see those two arrows that show water coming into our village from the other villages.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we will find a.
I could do it with a marking pen and a ruler.
No, I can do what I just did. I just need to make a note I'll just do it in a different color.
in that map, the red is that an elevation figure or is that a water figure?
That is an elevation figure.
Okay,
Yes.
okay. But it's just to show that because we are the other side,
So
we are so much lower.
red is high, green is low.
Exactly.
And this is where it shows what Jackie was talking about. You have these kind of ditches,
Yes.
that some of them have been piped, but even we can add the topo lines. Even here, like this is a major kind of conveyance point between the rear yards. But the two lowest points, are this conveyance system and this conveyance system.
I think that explanation of everything you just did would be wonderful. Be very
Okay.
helpful.
And those also follow closely the two previous stream channels
Sure.
that you can see.
You can see, we can't.
Yeah.
We don't know.
I'll do
We
I
the
don't
can
know what
see
to
same.
it
look
better
for.
with your pointer, but I couldn't see it
I'll
before.
we'll highlight it more clearly
Okay.
and add
All right.
Yeah.
just so it's clear for people to see.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful.
Perfect. Picture
The thing,
tells stories that tells
Mhm.
as picture tells 1,000 words, or what's that expression? Whatever.
Yeah, it's worth 1,000 words. So.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep, we already talked about that.
And it would seem to me that that subject is also one that would be really warrant and merit an intermunicipality discussion at a high level and how and link it to funding so that if we're going to do something about it, it's your problem and it's a joint problem that initiates in your area. Can you help us with
I did include that in one of the grants that Montgomery County would have to pursue. It would be more attractive to the county and then also the funder MDE if it was a more regional approach.
exactly?
So coordinating with the adjacent communities that drain into the village.
Yeah.
So that is
that's
noted.
like a big time sort of a political policy thing that would yeah. So I think that's very important here, and it's also a source of funding, right? So that if you're going to address it, you don't have to
Yes,
look for it all from our own pocket.
the state has a grant, but the applicant has to be a local municipality. So it would have to be the villages coming together and approaching the county. And you guys could do it yourself, but it would be a more attractive package if you work with
joint.
the whole drainage area. So those offsite areas that drain into the village, then you're covering the entire sub-watershed.
Yeah.
I think we've talked about adding language about lack of stormwater ordinance. Yes, we've talked about that. So, yeah, I don't know if it's this one. So in the Mark, I don't know if you realize the Word document, some of these figures were full page figures, so they're not like within the Word document. There was a separate folder that you could download, and
Yeah,
also
I know.
within the draft PDF, the full page figures were inserted. So I think that would help clarify. And then for some reason, I know further down I don't know why some of the table data did not appear when we get down to some of the other sections in the SharePoint link, but it does show up in the PDF.
All right.
Right. All of the
So,
criteria.
And then I noticed you realized as you got further down that these were not ranked. These are just the areas themselves.
Yeah.
And they're they're listed based on geography, and we can add language to that.
Yeah, it's
I think,
interesting. Just my note on, there's a lot of emphasis here on 3411 Raymond Street.
And we'll remove that. It's more just Raymond Street in general.
Yeah,
I know it's more the downstream areas, but we'll revise it to be just Raymond Street.
yeah. I think they
oh,
misunderstood. We have a shared driveway, and we're the ones that put in the drainage system in that shared
Of course.
driveway.
So that's probably where.
And so they were assuming it was 3411, but it was a big cost for us to have to put in the drainage system.
speaking of
And
house
we
numbers,
had to do it after they built a couple of the really huge houses at the top of the hill and took away all the permeable surfaces. We were just
Yeah.
getting flooded out constantly.
Megan, one other thing, speaking of in this section, when you're on the Oxford Quincy Street intersection, in the text, there's an error. It gives the 4 house numbers in your text somewhere when you're discussing this section, not the table, but down where the
Okay.
narrative on. Okay, it says 203, 5, 7, and 9 Quincy Street, but it should be Oxford Street.
Okay,
I
we'll
know
get there.
because one of the right, because I live
Yeah.
on it. I mean, I'm in that range, but it's actually Oxford Street, not Quincy. Those 4 houses right in a row that all had at the bottom of the hill that had the problem. So
Okay, so Jackie, I think that's a good comment that we can publish the figures separately. So if they want to have them as a separate file, just to look at
Yeah.
side by side.
Yeah.
That's fine. Yep, we already talked about that. I'm going to remove language
there
that's
it is.
frequently or
Yeah.
the adjectives. I'm just going to remove.
That's the sentence with the numbers that 203, 5, 7, and 9 Oxford. It should be
Here we
instead
go.
of, yeah,
Okay.
instead of Quincy. Okay.
So did you prioritize the different high priority areas, or you left that for
No, we
a later?
did.
Yeah, I thought you did.
Further down, we
Yeah.
then prioritize. This is just
Yeah.
introducing the areas, what their issues are
Right.
based on the modeling. And then we propose the mitigation strategy for the area. So this is not ranking
Okay.
them. This is just saying, this is the problem. This is what we propose.
Right. And you're going to put keys on these things, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Great.
Isn't this the section where, Mark, you said you couldn't tell the difference between the way that flooding looked from now and 10 years from now after the remediation?
Yeah,
It was a bit
If you
before
look
and
at them
after.
side by side, you'll see the area of blue is reduced and then also the shading of blue is reduced.
Mhm.
So that
Yeah.
just means the extent it's not eliminated, but the extent and depth is significantly reduced.
Hmm.
So yeah, did we say it that way? That language?
I don't think so.
That would be
Reduce the
helpful.
flooding and we say reduce the flooding and extents. So we don't say we're
Oh,
eliminating it.
right. Which makes me want to know, is there something else we're going to need to do to eliminate it?
I believe this had an issue of there was a downstream pinch point. We couldn't upgrade it further.
Then you need to say that too.
We will add that.
Okay.
Well, we'll turn it into Chevy Chase Lake. That's what it looks like. Lake part number 2.
Yeah, we could do eminent domain for some of the
Yeah,
housing here
when
and
I
create
saw
a
that,
lake.
when I saw that, I said, well, I'm glad I'm 78 years old because
Yeah.
because my 50-year scenario doesn't look very hopeful looking at that big blob of blue.
And another thing that we can note, you mentioned eminent domain versus that, identify areas that lots that flood frequently, and as they go up for sale,
Yes.
the village can consider purchasing and then turning them into a BMP or a conservation area.
Oh, that's an interesting idea.
it's not on your timeline, but generally if someone's experiencing frequent flooding, they might not want to stay there.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, there's no reason why you can't mention that in this report too, as
Yeah.
another remediation thing.
Hmm.
That would take care of Martin Additions reserves with 2 houses.
Yeah, that's why it's just a thought.
Right. It's an
We'll
interesting
we'll
one.
we'll define safely convey. That means the pipes proposed can handle the 10-year flow to them. So we're not that in that scenario, the pipes are handling the flow to them.
Sounds like a glossary thing to me. Because I'm sure you use your language all the time.
Okay, I think we've already talked about a lot of that. And we've talked about what homeowners can do as if they're experiencing problems.
Yeah, well, we're going to handle it on 2 levels now. Those who are experiencing problems and those who are contributing to problems.
Yeah. So yeah, if you look at them side by side, you'll be able
Yeah.
to see there's a reduction of extents and depths. And once the legends get added, it'll be more clear.
But the
And
point is it doesn't eliminate the problem.
right.
No, and in some scenario, I don't think this is the only issue where it's not completely eliminated. So when you have flooding issues in very developed areas, in some cases you can't eliminate. So then the goal is, you remediate as much as possible. So reducing the time and extents of flooding. So it's less of an issue.
We need to explain that thinking.
Okay.
And then, of course, somebody will ask, well, how many inches will it be?
And that's where the legend will show you kind of the depth. It has the color is a depth.
Right.
Yeah, it goes to 7. Booming.
The red lines are the links to the Montgomery County Storm Sewer.
So the red lines are just the pipes we modeled, knowing there was
Uh-huh.
private infrastructure here, we did survey it.
Yeah.
So once again, we weren't proposing any specific improvements on private property as part of this
Mhm.
report. So this is something the
Right.
homeowner can look at. Once the street
Yeah.
pipes get upgraded, they could then look at upgrading their pipe if they wanted
Right.
to.
Right. That's my pipe, by the way, that red line.
And we know it was there because of the field walk with you.
Right.
But
That,
that's another explanation that would be helpful that some of these changes will enable, you said it someplace, I remember, will enable residents to do more work on their property.
Yeah, so that's in the overall section, which I know a couple people have commented. We'll move it to before this section,
Right.
so it'll get moved up so people have more of an overview before they get into the more detailed areas.
Okay.
but
And so,
that's
Jack,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead, Elizabeth.
No, I was going to say, but linking in is only possible when there is a major pipeline running down the street in front of your house.
Right.
And we've got many
Right.
streets where they don't have that.
So that
So
this report
yeah.
proposes those improvements. So then
Exactly.
if and when that happens, they then have the opportunity
To do that, which is
until
great.
then they can just do stabilization where runoff is on their yard, give it a
Right.
defined safe place to go through their yard. But then once there's a pipe, they can then move it out of their yard.
Yes.
Jack, yeah, what was the red here? A band of water ice I'm seeing. Was it
No,
this
I
red
just
line?
there's so many reds in this report. I didn't know which, it just was hard
Okay.
to. So
The legend will then help clarify that.
right, correct.
Okay.
And when it
I
becomes
stopped
a little
commenting on that
blob.
because once I looked at the first place location, I realized this was a chronic challenge.
Then for the intersection of Brookville and Bradley, we did look at adding infrastructure, but the length and extent to where it would start to the closest place to connect it is very costly. And it's not something I'm saying that shouldn't be done ever, but for the sake of the current issue right now, the issue is there's a low point that has nowhere for runoff to go. So once it rains, it just kind of sits there because there's like a low sump area.
Yeah.
And so we were able to say like, okay, if they just kind of regrade this little area of pavement, it'll then have the runoff can then drain.
And
It
where
won't
will
just
it
be
drain?
sitting there.
Um,
Some will go down Brookville, some will go down Bradley.
it might be
Uh-huh.
worth here to mention that this is really an area that concerns a larger municipal response because we can see
Mhm.
that most of the water is accumulating on the other side of Brookville. And also, I say that because when we'll get there later when we do the prioritization, but it rises to immediate priority, and it doesn't seem like actual homes are affected here. So that's just something that will come up in the discussion with the community, I'm sure. And so I just want to
Okay.
flag it now.
And Mark, our proposed modeling did look at the changing of the drainage patterns. So the um, the improvements on Shepherd Street do consider the additional drainage, and it's minor because right now most of it either goes towards Bradley or goes down Brookville. It's just the small little area of intersection that ponds.
I understand.
So Jackie, does that explain what we achieve with the regrading?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, it's just that's the just to fix the low point.
Yeah.
The regrading requires repaving. You grade underneath and
Yes.
then you repave.
Or you can do it just with adding sometimes they'll mill and then you just add a little bit thicker overlay in one area because we're just talking, like
Yeah.
tenths to get it to drain.
And does that require state permission to do that on Brookville Road?
It will. And that is noted in the report with required permits.
Yeah.
Once again, we didn't do a detailed survey of the intersection, so that's where you'd have to do a detailed survey and figure out exactly where, what the grade elevations are going to be and the exact limits of grading. But this is the area we
Okay.
estimated based on the LiDAR data.
All right.
Mary said we're removing adjectives. We'll define RCP. Reinforce.
So sorry, Arthur and Michael, if I don't know if Michael's present on the call, but just I'm wondering how that area impacts the sidewalk project. Just it'd be great if we could just be prepared to talk about that at the meeting.
How the grading at that point affects the sidewalk?
Yeah, how the improvements at the corner of Bradley and Brookville,
Mhm.
how they intersect with the sidewalk project.
Mhm.
So a quick question on that. There's no drainage in the roadway at Brookville Road at all at that point. It doesn't go up that far. It only goes to about Shepherd Street, under Brookville Road. So this would be a new proposed drainage pipe.
Well, we're not proposing
not
a
a
pipe there
pipe.
right now.
No, the sidewalks will be widened, and this will increase the impermeable surface by a small amount.
And we would regrade. We're regrading, and part of the sidewalk project is putting in a new gutter that'll hopefully flow better. There's currently no gutter in the side of that road, so that'll make some improvements, but it's not going to be a lot.
A gutter, like just a little concave, shallow dip like that.
Like
Yeah.
there's the curb, and then there's a foot and a half of concrete that allows water to flow.
Mhm.
The point is that Michael, I think is if they did regrading of Brookville as Balin is suggesting, how does that tie into positive or negatively into what you're doing now?
It
Would it help
shouldn't.
or hurt?
They're not changing the roadway elevations to my knowledge, so this would just be supplemental and
It's just
independent.
nudging the water over to
It's
Bradley.
pushing the water somewhere. Where's it pushing it to?
Down, you said into Bradley, the lower
It
side
would
of the.
probably a split, and that's where, once again, a detailed survey of the intersection would have to be done. We don't know, every detailed
Uh-huh.
point along the edge of road, just based on the general LiDAR data and our site visit where we could see the physical low point of the road. That's our recommendation based, and that would be the short-term fix. The long term would be looking into a improved drainage system.
Yeah.
But once again, that's adjacent community, the adjacent villages and state highway.
That's right. That's the we don't actually own the roadway, so that wouldn't be our project at all.
But could you propose it with
Yes,
another municipality? With
Yeah, we can
whatever
propose
that
it to
is,
the
the
state.
village.
Yeah, it's the state highway administration that owns the roadway.
Right.
Yes, you can propose drainage improvement projects, but if it's not on their fiscal year planning or they don't want to do it, you would have to provide the funding for design permitting and construction. It would still go to SHA for review. They have a hydraulic review group, so they would look to make sure everything's sized per their design guidelines.
Mhm.
So I'm sorry, what would be the long-term change to the road? You had I forgot what word you
The
used to
pipe.
describe it. Pipe.
Installing
Pipe.
storm drains. Yep.
Okay, I got it.
That's the actual solution on Brookville Road.
Yeah.
It's a technical solution with a lot of politics involved and time.
Or it's a political solution with a lot of technical things involved.
Yeah, the solution would be political, right?
Yeah, afraid so.
Well, you'd have to have really good documentation why it was problematic for everybody.
Yeah, you've got to get the benefit, the maximum benefit
Yeah.
to the maximum number of people.
I think that the owners of that house that's right on the corner on the village side, the Chevy Chase Village side, would really, they're the ones that suffer the most because it literally laps up onto their driveway.
Wow. Sign them up.
Mm.
So, Jackie, we did not run the larger storm events through the system. But we do have cost data for larger pipes. So that I guess it would
think
be,
that I realize that that's probably a question for the engineering stage when we actually get down to doing the engineering studies.
yeah, they
Where
could
because
look,
it's back to the original comment about if it's a 2% additional cost and there's no
Mhm.
pinch point, why wouldn't you go with a bigger pipe? That kind of
agreed.
But I think you're right. I think you do that when you get to the detailed engineering design. So
Okay.
you can just skip that.
Or mention that's what you would do.
I think we're going to do it up front. I think we talked
Yeah.
about some.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah. Megan's got that up front.
We'll fix the typo. We did model the inlet sizing, so we can say what sizes we're recommending.
Yeah, this was a question just because when I walk around and certainly on our street, I just see a lot of these drains because mulch is so widely used in this community. They're clogged. So,
Are you talking about drains within the street?
no, not the bigger ones within the street, but some that are
Yeah.
kind of on people's property or in their gardens, but they're clogged, so they're not really helping.
So
But
we
also
always,
on our street, we have even the gully along this sidewalk. Sorry, in the street itself gets really clogged. And so water at times, instead of going all the way to the bottom of Raymond Street, has gone into our yard just because of debris and leaves and things in the road.
So that's something, if you know of other yard inlets that are more of the grate system, I highly recommend the concrete throat opening. I'm trying to find a picture of a
Yeah,
project
I'd never heard of that before, so I was curious what that.
that, um,
I had that conversation with early on with the neighbor because all of the mulch was going right into our French drain, which was the one that's saving us from being flooded, right? So I have to go out there, even now, I have to go out there and clean that thing out, about
Yes.
once every 2 weeks to get everything out of it from.
What do you do with the mulch?
I throw it away. Well, or I put it back on my trees that are a little further down on the other side of the house.
Well,
so
if
you
you
can see it.
ever have piles of mulch, tell me, I'll come get it.
Yeah, no, I mean it's usable, but I
Yeah.
said, not please, don't put it there because all it does is
So
stump up.
Megan,
Right.
seeing the picture, it seems like aesthetically this is not going to go in a
Oh, uh-huh.
nice garden, right? It's more
No,
of a
it can. So you
it
can,
can? Okay.
yeah, we
Okay.
propose them even in like our bioretention facilities.
Oh, okay.
Ornamental grasses around it.
Yeah, just you obviously don't want to plant in front of the openings, but on the sides that don't have openings, you can put grasses around it and try and hide it. You can also, put some nice river rock cobble kind of around it to
Yeah,
Right.
surround it.
got it. Okay.
Um, you are going to have the concrete slab on top, but you set we call the throat, which is the bottom, you set it at grade. So the bottom of the swale or the stormwater BMP. And, it's 8 inches high, I want to say. So that mulch is, it'll wash away, but it'll go through into the system. Now you're going to have to worry about kind of pipe capacity and cleaning out. But
Yeah.
you're not going to have those blockages you get with the grate inlets.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Megan, to that point, it might be worth just making a note in the report about maintenance. Um, any maintenance costs or schedules. It's just really helpful in informing the council. I
Okay.
yeah. Because,
There's
I know
also,
that, people have proposed impermeable driveways and pathways, and those have to be cleaned out, right, on an annual
Mhm.
schedule. And then, there may be an impact in some areas on snow removal, and how snow removal happens. So it's just helpful, if there's, that just gets mentioned quickly where appropriate.
I think we can
on
add
the
that
sub,
into the overall section, just general maintenance requirements.
it can also be
Cost is
mentioned.
really just dependent on, once you can kind of see once you have a maintenance schedule, you'll see how quickly maybe an inlet or a pipe kind of gets filled
Mhm.
up and needs to be vacuumed out. So that's something it's hard to gauge because it just depends on the runoff and the amount of debris that enters the system. But as far as the BMPs, there are guidelines of how frequently to inspect them and ensure that they're functioning that we can add.
Yeah,
Thank you.
that's what
That'd
I
be
was going to
great.
say. That
Thank you.
that that's what Chevy Chase Village is doing. They already have it. It's those kinds of required inspections, but required maintenance of your whatever the under the driveway, collection. What do they call those?
And
Those
yeah, the
pad.
permeable pavers. Chris did
Yeah.
talk about maintenance, like, making sure it's in an agreement so communities
Uh-huh.
or homeowners can't change it. It's in perpetuity. So if somebody
Right.
sells the home, they're
Goes
then
into
responsible for it.
your title. Right.
Yeah. And
Right.
then
Exactly.
and then if they're not maintaining it, it gives the village the opportunity to go on site and, you
Mhm.
know, I don't know, there might be sections about bonding and stuff where if they're not
Right.
maintaining it, the village can then take their bond
Yeah.
and fix it themselves.
Right. But that's after you have a stormwater management policy for all new construction
Yes,
and owners. I don't think it's retroactive, but for all the new things, then they'd be under that, you know, correct?
correct.
For
Correct.
the
Yeah.
future.
Yeah, I don't think you can make it retroactive,
Mhm.
but you could.
Well, you can if there's construction that implicates the building code because most jurisdictions require
Mm,
that when you do improvements, you've got to bring everything up to code.
I see. Yeah, you're right.
So it's something to look at.
And not to give a waiver. not to,
Right.
for of it. I mean, right? Stick to your guns.
Okay, we've talked about, I think a lot of these comments we've already addressed.
One question I had here was about the positioning of that section that you just passed over, the remediation solutions. Whether if you're going to have the discussion about these, the broad approach that are possible, whether that should be appear earlier in the document as sort of the cover before you dive down into the specifics with the high priority areas.
Yes, I did say we could move it. Somebody else made
Mhm.
that comment as well, so we can move it.
I
I don't
thought
know what the
about
others
your
think about it.
comment. Yeah, Elizabeth, I thought about your comment, and initially I agreed with you, and then I thought, no,
Uh-huh.
no, it's actually a good idea to have it afterwards because, that's going to be such a community decision that it doesn't affect, we have solutions. How, what order in which those solutions get implemented and what the
Mhm.
available budget is and what the barriers might be, like, state permitting or wherever, that's a future discussion. So I, I, I kind of like the way Bayland presented it initially.
And we can see once we add to it and rework it, it's very easy to just take what's there and move it if we have to. So we can see
Well,
how the next draft looks.
it's
I don't
if
have
it
a strong opinion if the
mhm.
village has one preference one way or another.
if if it could at least be referenced up above in your overall description, like in the, your
W-
introduction or the
within some of
executive
the
summary. All right.
we'll list it in the executive summary, and
Yeah.
within some of the high priority discussions we do say
Yeah.
as discussed in section 7. So
Yes. Okay.
That's
Great.
a good compromise.
Yeah.
okay,
All right.
so where are we? And Mark, yes, we're going to add the sentence so that way that there's no ranking when we introduce the high priority areas. This is where the ranking begins.
Perfect.
We can add just a general statement as to why, one area was costly, required easements from properties. We can add some general summary text.
Yeah,
Well, protect.
Yeah.
to explain your thinking.
Right. It was sort of like your rationale for, I mean, first of all, coming up with these 6 indicators, and then they'd have different weights. So obviously you were thinking some were more important than others or whatever. So that was
hmm
because in the end, so I asked myself that question when I looked at the results and saw that some of the worst areas ended up at the lowest priority, like the Taylor Street one, that's a huge problem that
It
affects 4
it wasn't
streets.
necessarily lowest priority, and when we get to the implementation plan, I noted that
Hold its placement
it
in
was
longer
long term.
term.
It was long term more just because of the
Mhm.
higher cost. That's why it ranked low.
Well, that
It,
was my
I, it
question.
it's not that
Yeah.
it's not important. It's long term because it's higher cost. It's going to
Yeah.
require more coordination, and so it's not something that can be
Mhm.
done short term. It's going to
Well,
be
then
more of
maybe
a
But
maybe would it be possible to say that in your analysis?
I mean, Megan, to that point, some of the high priority areas that require state permits are going to take a long time. And we've seen that on the sidewalk project, that it's just been really hard to negotiate those permits. So I don't know how comfortable I feel with weighing those things, with the way that's weighted. It's something to consider, and we'll see how the community reacts to this. Um, but I think that as a task force member, I would like to be open to feedback from the public on these things.
So what
okay.
are you saying? You'd rather not rank them or what?
No, no,
Yasmina?
I'm not sure that the weighting necessarily makes sense for us as a community. Because as you
Mm,
said, I mean, the houses on Taylor, they're really directly being impacted. They're small properties. There's not much room for individual homeowners to make improvements, and then they're rated lower on the scale compared to some of the other projects where houses are not actually being impacted. So I think this is really a discussion that we need to have as a community. It's a big discussion that we're just not prepared for today in this meeting. And I think we need to be open to that discussion.
And that's
Could it be
fine. I know
couched?
at one point I did say, we do reach out to you to the task force to provide input. We don't live in the community, so we've had clients where they've wanted to reorder the prioritization based on what they feel their needs are, and so we can rework it as necessary.
Maybe what I was thinking, would it be possible to do sort of pros and cons for
Yeah,
each of them,
that's what I
right?
was thinking. Why don't we lay out the factors that are driving the discussion and driving the ranking so that people for each one so that people understand the pros and cons.
And then the council can decide how much money they want to spend. If it is a bigger ticket item, but that overall it has more urgency when you look at the flooding issue,
Hmm.
then they
Mhm.
may want to change the order,
Yeah, I
something
know
like
the
that.
tables didn't show up in the Word document.
Yeah, they didn't. And that was because you have to log out of this system and then go back into it again to get to the other document that has the tables filled out. So,
And so just overall, kind of equal weight was given to severity and risk of infrastructure costs, easement needs, just because whenever you have to deal with private
20,
properties, it's
20.
always
Mhm,
it's difficult, it can delay things or even be stop the project. So that's
mhm.
something if it's something weighed poorly because of the easements, if you go reach out to those property owners and they're all on board right off the bat, then that could significantly shift um, where that ranks. And then flooding improvement. So those four kind of ranked equally. And so even if something had decent flooding improvement, but it was really expensive, it almost like averaged it out relative to the other areas.
Mhm. Right. That was the case with at the bottom of Bradley, for example, because I was
Hmm.
looking.
And so
It
this is
didn't.
where you can see where it had zeros or 20s or 15s. So it had a lot of infrastructure affected, decent flooding improvement, but between the cost and the private properties that would need to be accessed to implement the project, it just started to give it a much higher
Yeah. I
score.
think one thing you might want to add, because the easements do have quite a significant weight in the scale, is you would have to add the state permits because that's going to change. That's probably as difficult to obtain as an easement, or maybe halfway as difficult as an easement.
For the
Um,
small intersection improvement, it's just a district office permit. They're normally you just submit the site plan and an application. It should be pretty low level.
okay.
We've done these types of permits. I know something larger like putting in like a drainage pipe. They have this, five agencies within the SHA will review it. They have significant hydraulic comments typically. But for just a minor reworking of grading within an intersection, and we've done it on other projects, it's been pretty straightforward.
No, I totally understand. I would just hate a situation where, you have a lot of houses that are deeply impacted by the flooding, and then they fall to a lower, priority because
Hmm.
it is going to cost a lot of money to address a very important issue. So that's all. And I don't think it's fair for the task force necessary to have that discussion without the community. So I would be totally fine with parking this conversation and moving it to a community meeting.
Well,
Okay.
Or-
okay. Let's just talk that. I understand what you're saying. Let's just talk that through. Um, the c- the way the community meetings are go is everybody's going to be most concerned about the street they live in. I will be. Everybody is. But I agree that the community input makes sense. I'm wondering if what we I'm wondering whether we want to do a ranking. I'm wondering whether we want to list we go back to the pluses and minuses, the pros and cons, and the different problems associated with things, and we list all that out in bullets. Uh, Maybe it's a non-judgmental, it's an objective, non-judgmental approach.
Yeah.
But if we do it your way, which is fine, I'm open to it. I'm just like trying to figure it out. Then we're probably talking about two meanings. One is the quality of the report, and the one would the discussion ranking would be its own meaning.
There's one thing though, these were based on the scientific evidence, the data, right? These weren't picked out of a hat. These are the results of the studies and the measurements that were done. And presumably, Megan, I mean that though they came to the surface when you compared the data on the different measurements that you took, right? And
Yes.
added, all right. So you've got those areas as higher priority. I mean, in terms of imminent danger or whatever from imminent threat from flooding. Then so that you can't argue with that because that's a fact, right? I mean, it's a measurable fact.
It's a risk ranking.
Wait.
Huh?
I think yeah, yes, it's from the study, but are we sure that when we list infrastructure effective, that the flooding is entering people's homes? Because to me, that's a very, like, I saw some situations when we did the site visits where it was really clear that houses were people's homes, their basements, were severely impacted by the flooding. And then there were other areas where people's landscaping was affected. And so when we look at some of the mapping, that's not always very clear. So I think that when we're ranking things, we it's important to take that into account because, a homeowner is going to feel very differently about having to scoop water out of their basement every time we have a heavy storm to, a muddy backyard.
Sure, but you've also got to look at the whole network. You got to go back to the pipes and you've got to see. I mean, that's what's going to save you is where those are. So if you're building off of something, and if we're talking about expanding the network, to a large part underground, that will save what's happening in some of those zones. That's my understanding here is that you're putting those additional pipes in the streets that neighbors will then in the future be able to tap into, like we did in ours right in front of the house, has saved us from flooding in the last 10 years since that's been in.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I see,
true.
and you got to
It's-
deal with your infrastructure that you've got, and then say where does it need to be improved, and where is the problem happening around that, and how do we? I mean I think so. I don't
Isn't
know.
there a way to do both? Isn't there isn't there a way to take the two or three issues that Yasmin is concerned about and integrate them into the ranking that we've got in the infrastructure ranking that we have
Oh,
now?
you mean water invading the house? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Well,
I think we'd have to
it's-
go
yeah.
back to the homes affected
Yeah,
to see
you have to.
where it is coming. Like at the bottom of Raymond Street, we don't even have basements, so when water has come in, it comes into our first floor
Oh, God,
because
Oh,
the basement
that's
will
terrible.
always flood. The other
Mhm.
factor that's not in here is to some extent, I think homeowners have tried to do what they can without the additional infrastructure. Like we've
Mhm.
done everything that we really can and we've put in a system and we're still getting a lot of water. So, there is no ability for anybody on Raymond Street to tap into larger pipes that would
Yeah.
avoid having the water come directly. And then we have the problem that everybody uphill from us has just paved over everything, massive houses
Oh,
paving over. And so, the 24 years we've lived in our house, it's just gotten worse and worse.
yeah. Well, I have French drains inside my basement that some pump out, so it just flows into underneath the brick and it's captured and then it's pumped out, so the basement is dry.
Yeah.
And some
And then
people may have a groundwater issue versus a
yeah,
surface stormwater issue,
Yeah.
and that's a whole
right.
nother
Yeah.
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
know,
we've got
But that has to
underground
be talked
underground
about.
study. That's
That has to
it's
be talked about too. We talked about that before with the boring. We're going to have, maybe we have to mention that. And then I had built French drain systems in my backyard to capture the neighbor's water and take it to my front yard and out the driveway. But um, the point being that all these things are important, and we can't do a perfect job. We can just get as close as we can to doing a thorough, well thought out job. And if we take some of these factors and if Megan can figure out how to integrate them in here, we could do it that way. And if not, then I think what we have to do is list the pros and cons
I think
for
you might want to
each
do that anyway.
location.
I mean,
Yeah, you
Megan,
could do it
is
both
there a
ways.
way, Megan, would you be able to look at the severity and risk to the community factor and measure that a little differently, based on your
so
site
that
and who is having water entering
So
the
we can
property?
look, we do have the surveys that you guys conducted, and our field maps did note whether it was yard versus getting into their house. But once again, that could be some of that could be groundwater versus
Mhm.
stormwater. And so I don't know how to differentiate that. That being
Mm.
said, I can still adjust the scoring system versus yard versus house, but the house could be groundwater versus stormwater.
Maybe it's just making a note, in this area that we're looking at as a priority area, X many homes have complained of water, entering
Hmm.
the building. And we don't need to specify whether it's groundwater
Uh-huh. Yeah,
or
no,
how
yeah.
it's entering.
I wanted to
Okay.
ask one other question on another criteria that occurred to me is especially with that issue of the water from Chevy Chase Village coming towards Taylor Street. Would opportunity joint for collaborative action or joint project, financing, or maybe it goes down under grant funding opportunities, but it's the idea of
I would
if
probably put that under dual benefit.
okay.
So we can
I
expand
had a
not just
question
water.
about what that meant. I had a question about that, yes.
So dual benefit, some of particularly the Thornapple Street, we're proposing a stormwater conveyance system which gets water quality credits. So the county has what's called an MS4 municipal storm sewer permit, and they have to treat previously untreated impervious area. And each term they have new areas they have to treat. I'm working on a project in another area of the county, and it's a stream restoration. They're fronting the money, but they coordinated with the county, and there's agreements in place where once they implement the project and we as built it and show that they're getting these credits for water quality treatment, the county is then going to pay a certain amount of money back to the community, and then they're going to take those credits.
Mm, yeah.
So that was dual benefit. It was just, credits that you can sell to the county and then get funding, but we can also
Mhm.
add dual benefit being a regional approach. It
Yeah,
can consider the adjacent communities as well.
Do
And
you
we'll just add,
define?
because
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
the Brookville Road one would fit that, and so would the one over on Taylor Street, right? I mean, if
so
you
we
were
can expand the dual benefit criteria, and that may shake things up a little bit.
okay.
Mhm. Are these criteria defined? I just don't know if I got to it.
They are up here.
Thank you. I'll go back and look at that again. So I got nothing. I just wanted to know. But maybe we can expand those definitions a little bit.
And it's also the adjacent community also then gets a little extra credit under grant funding opportunities, because then you then have that one state grant that the county may want to pursue. Not a guaranteed, but it's an option.
Yeah, so we just
Mark,
explain those things.
Mark, I'm just looking
Yeah.
at the clock. You've got about 5 minutes left, and there is a
Yes.
resident that has joined and has a hand up. So I don't know if you want to
Okay,
take it.
but let's see where we are first. And I appreciate that. And
If
we either
if
will get to that person or we'll ask that person for an email. But how far are we, Megan?
I mean, we still have, a handful to go through. Like I said, a lot of them I think we've generally discussed.
Mhm. Yes.
The code section, like I
Yeah.
said, we can just incorporate your comments and I'll have Chris take a look. And if
Okay.
we
And then
have,
I need the task force to look at them too because I just did that, on my own.
okay.
Yeah, I think it would
But
be helpful if we all had some time to look at those comments um, before they're finalized.
Those are the words in red that
Yeah,
the
the
text that
Yeah.
was added.
ordinances, because I don't know if we're jumping the gun on that a little bit, Mark, to be honest.
well, I just wanted to flush it out,
And I really
flush
appreciate
it
that. And I
out,
know
and
yeah,
get
you're
us
trying to
talking
move
about it.
ahead.
No, I'm trying to get us to be thinking,
Yeah.
and one of the things we want to do is help the council with a structure and controls that we think would work. If not, in reality, as an example. I'm flexible about that, but I think we need to give the council some guidance as to the controls that are needed.
And that, once again, the
I
tree
I have to say,
section,
Mark, that from
Well,
my perspective, in reading
okay.
some of the editing that happened, I actually found it confusing because I think
Okay.
it started to it just I found it confusing, and it was applying illegal thinking to an engineering report. And so it didn't, anyway, so I'd love some time to really think that through if that would
Well,
be
that's
possible.
fine. We should do that. And it can be tossed or it can be replaced or it can be edited. That's just get us talking about it. But in terms of legal thinking, that's exactly the way it should be done.
Right.
So, because that's what it's going to be is a legal system. So,
Yeah.
I
there are different
agree. I
ways to
think we
approach it.
need to be really clear about what we want to put in place before we develop the legal
Yeah.
language.
I
Yes.
would like to suggest also using or attaching or making reference to the other models that have, from other
Right.
jurisdictions that pieces of which are
Agree.
already available
I agree.
as
I agree.
examples and where they've done a huge amount of thinking on it and discussion. And so,
All
we
right.
shouldn't reinvent the wheel necessarily if we can use somebody else's good work. But
I've been thinking about that too. And what we could do is uh, put together an appendix that has all of those models. And
mhm.
then the discussion in here would simply be the controls that are needed generally and the process that's generally followed without specific detail. Would that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think you need to have, I mean, there's the permitting piece and there's the, ordinance on ordinance level. There's the maintenance part of it. I mean, if we can kind of identify what are the major prongs in regulating this area and where text would have to be drafted. And there's also the well, even the tree part, for example,
Yeah.
that some cases the tree canopy is folded under this and in terms of how that's handled.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
I
in
think
what
that's right.
I saw some good examples of this in our neighbors. And in fact, I was going to go back and ask their lawyers or whatever were discussing the draft, to upgrade their code
Hmm.
on the stormwater management. And that was some months ago, and perhaps they finished it by now, and we could get a copy of it, or maybe they'd even let us have a draft, maybe.
Yasmin, you were going to say something?
No, I agree with Elizabeth, but I feel like I need more time to look at your notes as well, Mark. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to have to jump off this meeting because I have another one that's starting up. So
Okay,
I'll come back
that's
and listen to all of the rest of the discussion
right.
recording. But if there is a way for us to have have time to really look at it closely, that would be helpful.
Okay, so let's talk about what's next. We can do
Yeah.
that in a minute or two. Um, are we're pretty far along.
Yeah, Mark, we do have a resident who has a question before you close.
Well, I understand that. We'll get to that. So we're pretty far along. Are we at a place now? The plan was to have Megan revise her report. We would look at it as individuals again, I guess, in some SharePoint methodology because we can't meet or without meeting, and be ready to present to the community in mid-January. Can we still make that? What is your opinion about whether we can still make that schedule? I'm gone from December 13th through January 5.
I mean, I'm fine on our end, but if we're going to revise this report and we're going to get another slew of comments, it might be hard then to prepare a presentation if there's going to be more changes.
Are there what is each of the member, thank you. What do each member think about next steps then?
Or
I
do we have
understand. Well, first thing
another
we want to do
meeting
is, yeah,
in this format? Do we have another meeting in this format?
that's what
Or
I'm
we have
wondering.
the revised report, the task force has an opportunity to review it, and it's
Yeah.
posted to the village website so the community can look at it. And then we have another meeting in this format.
Okay, so one more meeting in this format, posting, and then the public meeting. Is that what you just said?
Those are my thoughts, just knowing, you guys internally want
Yeah,
to review some things in a little more detail.
yeah,
We'll make the changes on our end, and then that gives you guys opportunity to review and see how you feel about the revised language.
right.
Yeah.
I'm leaning that way. What about you, Jackie and Elizabeth? And Nick should be around somewhere.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some of the really tricky questions really are more for the council and the community to start to weigh in on
Yes,
the priorities
yeah,
and costs and all that stuff.
right.
And what we need to do is get the technical report closed, which I think we're pretty close.
I
So,
do too, but would it be useful then to have one more of these meetings to clean it up? What we want to do is give the community the best product we can for them to evaluate. And we seem to have a few questions
Well,
among ourselves. So should we
well,
have one more work meeting and then go public with the comments or not?
I mean, there's a third way we could do it, which is, we might not need once we see the next iteration of this report, we might feel like the technical report from Bayland is solid, that's in good shape. But what we have to talk about as a task force is how do we present that in the context of the process for making decisions about priorities, the
Right,
complementary
right,
work around green infrastructure. I think
right.
as a committee, we need some consensus about the context of this report in terms of our overall recommendations.
What that makes me think, and I think I agree with you that we need another meeting where we would work with the revised report and we would address the issues that we've been talking about,
Mhm.
primarily ranking.
Yeah, and I think that people have some very good questions about green infrastructure. How much of a difference can that make? And I think we have to be clear that that's a different strategy than engineering solutions. It's really much more
Yes,
about community education and outreach, and we will be
yes.
also looking at that.
So we're going to pump that. Megan's going to pump that up, and maybe we as a group can do some research ourselves
Yeah.
and pull together some devices to do that.
Mhm.
Okay, so do we have a consensus that there's three of us that I
Um,
know are here?
I just want to
Do we
say,
have?
this is Nick here,
Thank
Mark.
you.
Thank you.
Uh,
And I appreciate Yasmina's point that Balin's engineering report should stand as its own. I understand the prioritization, but I do think it might be cleaner to remove some of these other pieces and address them at a later time. So I think Balin can make their changes now, and we can have one more meeting if necessary, or if we all see it and it looks fine, then go to public without,
Oh,
yeah, that's my
I'm
comment.
fine with that. Are Jackie and Elizabeth, are you okay with that?
Yeah,
That's
I
fine
guess
One more
with
so.
me.
meeting?
And
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
what Jackie was proposing sounds like some kind of like a transmittal letter. Um,
right.
that would go
Yeah.
to the council, kind of, right, with,
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk about dates because you're gone quite a bit of time. In the minutes, we said possible dates in January, but back when we talked about it last time were the 12th, 13th, 14th, or the 21st of January
Well,
for that public meeting.
those dates were going to be for the public meeting. Now I think it's going to, well, this is the public meeting, but that was for the public commentary part. But I think we're going to use that date for the our finishing our work in preparation to
You
make
mean
the presentation. Yeah, to
the
the
next
make
meeting like this?
right, and then we would then have after that meeting we would submit it to present it to the public for conversation
In,
and their suggestions, and then we would finalize the report for the village
I
council.
wonder if we have to do two meetings. I wonder if we could use that 14th that you mentioned, Elizabeth,
uh-huh.
for a small condensed. I hope it wouldn't take 30 minutes or so to get
Mhm.
through this process, and then the 21st still in January. Try to keep to
Yeah.
the presentation to the village at large and the council.
Hmm.
I'm
I would
confused.
be
That
in
still
favor.
sounds like two meetings to me.
Well, it's a
It
much briefer meeting like we're doing
Yes,
today on the revised proposal, right? But
yes,
it should be much shorter because we had a pretty good discussion on today on what needed to be
Right, and if
um,
yes.
the transmittal
fixed.
letter, if we say we don't need that, then we don't have to have that meeting on the 14th. We go with what Bayland has changed to and we're all comfortable with without having a meeting, and we present on the 21st.
Well, but if we agree
Well,
that we're comfortable, we've essentially had a meeting.
the transmittal letter doesn't need to be the one that's discussed with the public. I think that could be from our task force to the council once
Yes,
it in the very last step when it goes in February,
right.
right?
That's
And that
what
would give us
Megan
a
and I
little
were
more time.
Megan and I were conceptualizing the transmittal letter as
Uh-huh.
basically a cover letter that would have whatever add-ins that we're adding that we was the result of our work that Balin feels uncomfortable
Got it. Got it.
talking about
Yes.
because it wasn't part of their study.
Yeah.
I
That's what we were
apologize.
thinking
So
about.
so
It's what else
Ken
needs to be done,
I
right?
have
and
to
Yes,
go because I've
Okay.
we
a
all
feeling
do.
of getting, so I'm going to sign off, but I'm supportive, Mark, of the direction we're going here.
Nick,
yeah, if we can have comments and back and forth and agree on it without a meeting, that we don't have to have a meeting to do that. If we agree individually through electronic media
uh,
that it's fine, then we go on 21st
so let's
without
just
a meeting on the 14th.
so how about we just have a placeholder on the 14th if we feel it's necessary with the meeting on the 21st as a definite.
Yes,
yes, let's do it that way, and I'll see if Michael is comfortable with us doing this last part by um, email, and it will not be considered an open record meeting act problem. If we can do that, then I'm fine with it.
right.
But emails, well, never mind. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to hold the 14th for uh, another editing meeting, and
Well,
Exactly.
then we're going to hold the 21st for another presentation meeting, and we'll see how it goes.
That's right.
Does everybody agree to that?
yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a resident. Can somebody give that resident access to the floor?
Hi, it's Marty. Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yes. Hi. How
Okay,
are you?
number one, thank you all so much. This has been incredibly informative. This is terrific work. I couldn't be more grateful. I want to thank you for being holistic. As somebody who's at the top of the hill, I'd like to know what we can do from our hill to stop the problems downstream. And my question, though, is about the rankings, which you all did a great job talking about tonight. The severity and risk to community category surprised me. I realize it's a technical, rating from your model, but the community, I'm sure, is going to come back with the same question I have tonight, which is when you talk about risk to community, I think you're going to need to have some way to include a ranking factor that, for example, recognizes that the flooding at Bradley and Brookville affects school kids. That's a school bus stop. And so when you talk about risk to community, when that floods, that's a risk to the kids. And when the last time the Taylor Street and Brookville flooded, not only was the flooding a danger to the kids, that's another bus stop, right? With a lot of younger kids at the Taylor and Brookville bus stop. But the flooding was so bad that it carried a lot of silt down from, our neighboring jurisdictions. And for days afterwards, that intersection was a hazard because cars were sliding on the silt that the water left behind. It was an incredible hazard to kids. I actually got out there with a shovel and shoveled some of it myself, to get it off the roadway so that people could um, not slide. These cars were sliding all over. And you got, 8 and 9, 10-year-old, 7-year-old kids waiting for the bus every day. So there needs to be some factor here in the rankings, if you do rankings, or in the, sort of pros and cons, that says that the severity and risk to the community includes factors like that. Anything that affects people's ability to be safe going to and from the shops, for example, I would give a pretty high score for risk to community. And anything that involves flooding at a bus stop, I would give a score of risk to
Yeah.
community. And I really appreciate the point Yasmina made about the difference between people's houses flooding versus their yards flooding. That's the kind of thing I think that would be really useful to tell to people, because again, the human impact here is different. And so I don't know how to call it this. It's severity and risk to community, but it's not part of the formal model. It's part of the community input to ranking. Does that help you guys at all?
Yeah, I think
Sure.
that's
Megan,
a good comment. We did look at area of roadway flooded, so we can go back and see how our model represented the areas you just talked about. But that's something we can modify the rankings based on public feedback. We can solicit their safety concerns.
Yeah,
right.
those two are the school bus stops are really, in my mind, dangerous. So thank you for
Yeah,
however
because
you
that's
came
we
up with
don't.
Okay.
those.
I mean, we don't know where those bus stops are, so that's where the public can provide feedback that could adjust the rankings.
All right.
Glad
Well,
to help.
you just got two. That was very good. Now, can we go? My wife
Yes.
just walked in here. She's looking at
Okay,
me.
thank you all again. Good night.
Thank you. This was great. Thank you all. Bye bye.
Thank you. Thank you, Megan.
Meeting's adjourned.
Okay.